Hi, welcome to Let's Make a Fansite and Populate. I'm Marine, or rather, I'm Cahal. I'm a VTuber over in Twitch. I have hand tracking on this model while Marine doesn't, so I'm giving the presentation, and from here on out, I'm Marine. So, who's Marine? I left Twitter in 2022 because I was in obscure, unpopular fandoms where every time I went in the tags, I just saw people hating on my beloved canon. They weren't even paid for it at that point. I decided I was done with Twitter and thought maybe it's time I make my own website. Now, I'm not going to say I started from zero at this point. I had a website already that I used for portfolio stuff, writing reviews, logging which tokusatsu shows I'd seen. Apparently getting really good SEO and being hated by a fandom I wasn't actually active in, so I didn't find out 2 years later. I hosted this on Weebly, but this was where I split my websites. I created my professional website where I had all the information about my commissions and portfolio, and I made my site where I talk about Kamen Rider's bumming. So I officially had my professional site and I had my fan site. The professional site got all the good stuff, and all we have on the fan site is my review of Masterpiece Kamen Rider Kiva 2008. I don't even have a homepage anymore. There's just these reviews of Kamen Rider, and y'all, my site looks bad. We need something on here and we need it stat. But before we do that, we got to really define some sort of purpose with this move. So I was moving off Shitter. What is it that made me want to be on the Shitter in the first place? Like, my friends, of course, my beloved posts, and another part of my posts, my beloved live vlogs. Now, you're not me. You may have a different mission statement for your site, but one of the basic things you can do when you are planning your website is set out what you want from it. What has kept you on these sites that you don't want to use, and what can you do to remedy that through your website? You won't be able to remedy everything unless you're an actual developer who knows what they're doing. You're not making an end-to-end encrypted chat site. You won't be able to use your site to keep tabs on the Korean rare pair artists you love so much. But there are some things we can do. If you're here but I don't know what I want, you're in the right place. I'm going to get you started. If you do know what you want, I'm going to help you approach that in a manageable way. We're going to break down some sections of your new website into smaller pieces for you to work with. If you have any questions at any point, Real Marine is hopefully in the chat, but is otherwise available around the con and happy to help where he can. Right, so let's get started on some website setup. Ta-da! So we're going to start here with basically a blank canvas. I'm not here to teach you HTML, CSS. There's many people who will be happy to teach you that. You can spend as much time as you need on trial and error until it looks like something you like. However, that's not what we're doing today. Today, we're just going to use a template. There's many places you can find templates online, such as goblinheart.net/sadgirl, used to be sadgirl online. They also have a layout builder. There's numpad themes on Tumblr. There's the Tumblr tag Neocities themes and Neocities templates. And there's my zine. There's the zine form of Let's Make a Fansite and Populate it. It's available free now on itch.io. You may notice that the Tumblr tags reference Neocities. Neocities is one of many sites you can host a website on. It's popular. It's the one most people in this space know. You can integrate it with things like GitHub for smoother time editing, etc. But there's other providers, so don't feel you have to use them. Some of the ones I know people use are Squarespace, but I wouldn't recommend using Squarespace. It's expensive and it's a nightmare to work with. It's not going to give you a lot of flexibility. WordPress, but not the automatic version. Not the version owned by the same guys as Tumblr. Don't do that. There's another version of WordPress that is not owned by them, and it's really confusing because they use the same name. There's Nickelweb, there's Leopard.space, and there's Vercel. If you had know any others, you're welcome to share. Some of these are free, some are paid. I use NeoCities, which is free for the standard, but I have multiple websites on there, so I pay $5 a month. For this site, I'm going to use one of the templates for my zine. This is one I styled after a guild page on Neopets. Let me show you guys with them. So this is how it looks when you're not in the mobile view. You can see the mobile view on my Visual Studio Code. Some of you may be familiar with this sort of format. So let's get populating. Wrong. This is the accessibility sidebar. I'm not going to cover all things accessibility. I highly recommend checking out Ally Project for a lot more information on how you can make your website accessible. Remember, there's a lot of disabled people in the Fans community, and they would love to use your website. I'm not going to pretend I'm perfect. My site is long overdue me going through and doing a shit ton of alt text. You won't have that problem if you do it as you go. Anyway, here's some pointers to get you started. Make your text fucking legible. I've seen the cards. We've all seen the cards. If you are putting white text on a baby blue background, undo it, rethink it because no one can read it. I highly recommend using a contrast checker for doing this. Alt text, give your images alt text so screen readers can describe them. Your descriptions don't have to be long. If you put an image just as a spacer, you can just call it a spacer. There are blind people who can give proper tips, but my understanding as a sighted person, feel free to let me know if I'm wrong on this, is it just needs to give the idea of why it's there. If there's a panel with 5 characters talking and you're only actually trying to show one speech bubble, you can just put the text of that speech bubble and who's saying it. If, like I say, if you're someone who actually uses alt text, feel free to correct me. Avoid long repetition that can't be skipped with a screen reader, so don't have the same word 30 times in a row unless there's some way people can bypass it. That sort of, don't have 500 emojis in one row, that sort of thing. Only have one H1 tag per page. After that, use H2, use H3, use H4, etc. Make links distinct from your standard text so people know where they are. Don't have autoplay media and have controls for music, video, etc. There is an issue if you're using Web Deck Player. It's meant to not do autoplay. I found for some reason how it's interacting with the YouTube API. I'm sorry for any people that are getting lost in this conversation, but if people are using it, be aware that sometimes the autoplay doesn't work, or rather, autoplay doesn't turn off, even though you tell it to. I'm still trying to work it. I really should put in a bug report. Make your website mobile accessible. A lot of people will even tell you to design for mobile first and desktop second. I understand this ethos is less popular in fan sites because of their function as an expression of yourself. It is still best to be able to check your website on your phone, though. I don't expect you to have this down straight away. There's a lot of things that can hinder you from doing this, whether it's lack of knowledge or even your own disabilities. Just do what you can. Alright, so let's get into populating your homepage for real. Now remember, these are just examples. You can do as much or as little as you want. I'm going to start with an about me. I'm going to be real. I always struggle with writing about me's. I know a lot of us will also be my bio should contain no info whatsoever. My Tumblr bio has been a quote from an obscure abridged Shakespeare comic for the past 7 or so years. But this is a personal site and it is all about you. So it can be nice to have some sort of info, even if it's really just to state what your site ethos is. Some simple things you might want to include that just make it easier to address you or understand the site are things like your name, your pronouns, what language you should speak. No, not that. What language you should speak or which languages appear on the website, what your fandoms are. Maybe it's Lucky Star. Your persona, your troll persona. So let's get, if we look at my website real quick, here's a quick bio that I wrote earlier. I'll just uncomment it out. Hold on, let me get it up for you. And you'll be able to see it on the, hold on, let me refresh and then we can see it on there. There we go. I personally like having one on the front page that's just nice and short, give the people what they need at a glance, and then I have a separate About Me page where I primarily post a load of images that I feel describe me, and also a collection of anon hates that I have received. If you do set things like your current fandoms, make sure you remember and update them every so often. I'm also personally a big fan of having a changelog. This is basically what I use offsite to tell people to come look at my website because I may change something. For this demo, I'm just going to be writing a simple one. So we're going to make the feed.rss. We're going to have like the date, writing what's changed, then as I make more changes and upload them, I can add a new line to the description. So if we quickly come in here, I can put in, we're June 2025, and we can put in made website. And then I like to keep an RSS feed for my changelog in case anyone out there wants to keep up to date with my website. So I'm going to make a quick file called feed.rss. You can also make this with XML or Atom if you're more familiar with those, but I'm just keeping it super simple with here. This is the code I'd use for a simple RSS feed. It has your website title, it has a description of what your site is, a link. I've just put the link to my actual fan site rather than... Oh, hold on. Excuse me. Yeah, I've just put a link to my actual fan site rather than putting in a new URL for this one. And then I have the date it was last updated, and then you have an entry that has similar information, but what I'll do is I'll put in what our changelog here was. So it was, we made the website. And there's the date that I went live. And all you need to do to integrate RSS on your page is to link it. So I can just add some text that says RSS feed. In this case, I'm actually going to use the RSS logo. But hey, I add a link, and that will now be available to anyone with an RSS reader. You can also add this line up here in the head area, which creates a link to the RSS, so anyone who has an application that just searches the pages for RSS will be able to find it. My actual website is made using Astro, and one of the neat features Astro has is it can generate your RSS feed for you. There's also some customization you can do with it, so... Let me just pull up my website real quick so we can have a look. So you can see here, if it will load, I've made it more user-friendly with some information about how to use the RSS feed. If you're not familiar with Astro, it is essentially a code that saves me copy and pasting my layout to every page of my website, but it also has features like this RSS code generation. I highly recommend Boboboard's tutorial on how to use it, but please vouch for your favourite framework if you use something else. You may want to have a guestbook of some kind so people can comment on your website. There's a couple options for this, and I know a lot of people who use Google Docs to maintain their own comments. I've also seen people using Smart Guestbook or Smart smartgb.com, which doesn't display on your website, but you can link to it. The one I personally use is HTML comment box. I use it because it's easy to set up, easy to maintain, and I personally am a bit wary about Google. Don't let my wariness put you off, though. A lot of people really appreciate the moderation options Google provides. I'm not going to install a guest book on our demo site because there may be some identifying information and I don't want to moderate y'all's comments. Now, one of my favourite parts of a personal site is being able to fill it with silly little graphics, stamps, buttons, adoptos. There's a lot of places you can find these sorts of things, but my go-tos tend to be other people's websites, DeviantArt, any website that has iShop cards, Tumblr tags like the Old Web Resources tag. There's a cool site that I'll pop in the chat that's an archive of thousands of old buttons you can have a look at. And in typical Blue Peter fashion, I feel adopters are a little harder to come by nowadays. If you picked up a copy of the zine version of Let's Make a Fansite, there's a couple sites listed in there that in the 2 years since publishing have gone defunct. But there's still sites like GPX Plus, Dragon Cave, Giphy Pet, and Shroom.inc. Some adoptables will be things you can click on and they'll grow and change with interaction, or they'll have an external site you can use to interact with them on, or will be a PNG to play pretend with. If you want, you can also make your own adoptables page. So I'm going to add some of my Pokemon from GPX Plus. Let me get back up, I guess. Yeah, actually, I've already had them. My couple of Pokemon from GPX Plus and also my Neopets. So I can pretend that I'll ever get some referral points. But with that, we've got a pretty good start to our homepage. So let's move on to actually making this a bit more fanish in nature. The creative audience may want to set up some sort of archive of their fan content. I'm going to be honest, since I use Astro, I have a lot of this streamlined to fill in info for me. If you look at my website, it's not going to look like how we're going to do this. I don't want to spend a load of time on sorting that out, but I'll be happy to answer questions about it after. I am going to give you some options though, and hopefully that will get you somewhere. Just up the top, there is the issue of copyright. Posting fan content to your own site does not give the sort of legal protection AO3 does, so you are more at risk if you're hosting it yourself. Currently, it's not that dangerous, and copyright holders are being permissive with fanworks, but that may change between fandoms and in the future, so just stay aware of it. So for fan artists, one I really recommend is this template from KM Claude. It uses JavaScript, but it makes it so you can click on images and they'll appear in a display box at the top of the title and artist comment. If you go to my website, calmis.intothecanalspot.menu, you'll be able to see this in action. Another one is Nano Gallery 2. Nano Gallery 2 can be really helpful if you're a beginner because their website comes with a tool that makes a gallery for you using the template. Unlike KM Claude's gallery, it uses Lightbox, which is that feature you may have seen on sites where the image you clicked on overlays everything. But the simplest option is to simply have the image or a thumbnail of the image and then have it linked to the full-size version. If that's what works for you, go for it. It's how I have my galleries display on one of my websites, and I just have them displayed in columns. For this one, I'm going to be using KM Claude's gallery. And let me just get this up in the display, and I've got some images in that are not too spicy for the orange rating of this. Now remember, you can use these for any images you may want a gallery of. And I'll just show a couple of. Now, for fanfiction, if you are on AO3, you're going to have a super easy time. You're going to go to your fic, and you're just going to click download, and then you're going to click HTML. If you really wanted, you can just put this page that you download directly on your website. But if you want to put in slightly more effort, as we were going to do here, you're going to copy and let me get this back up, please. You're going to copy and paste it into your existing template. So just this section from where div ID chapters down to this div below message, or you could do slightly less. It's up to you. And then I have this here. I'm actually going to duplicate this just to have it as well. No. Okay. Yeah, we just take this, or you could also take the preface in as well, and you put it in like that. And then there we go. So the links currently on it will take people back to the L3 pages for that tag. But if you want, you can make these tags lead to pages on your website that list all the fix with that tag. If you really want, you can do all that by hand. But realistically, I feel this is something that is best handled by a static site generator like Astro or Eleventy. Unfortunately, while I have managed to do this, explaining it will take well over the time I have for this panel. I'll be available to talk about it after, but please remember my experiences with Astro. If anyone has experience with other generators, please feel free to pitch in. One thing we can do fairly easily without a static site generator is make a page, which is why I just did that copying. And we can put a header in. So let me get this back up in the thing. Oh, I need to... So we get a header in, and this is going to be for OE. And then we can just have a link. I'm not going to do a real link, but I will do an unordered list for it. Oh. So in theory, that would take us to the fic I just put. You can also add as much or as little information as you like. I'm going to be real. On my main site, I have this set up very L3-like because I think it works the best. But if you're just getting started or you're happy with this bare bones approach, this will do the job. You will have a page on your site for your fanfics. You'll be able to link them to people. You can even use the likes of HTML comment box to have comments on your fics. Oh, but doubling back real quick, if you don't have your fics on a site that supports HTML download, you will just be copy-pasting them into the template and wrap each line with a p tag. If you're using Visual Studio Code, what I tend to do is, let's have a line of nonsense there. I just do Control-Shift-P, and then M wrap with abbreviation, and then I type B, and that puts it around it. But if you know a faster way to do this for like multiple lines of fic, please feel free to share it. One thing you may be concerned about is hosting not safe for work content. If you're using a site like NeoCities, you're permitted to host I paused because my lemon stopped spinning. I was very upset. Sorry. You're permitted to host not safe for work content as long as your site is tagged as 18+, which can be set in the settings. Sites like Automatic WordPress do not allow not safe for work content. It's best to check when choosing your host what kind of content they permit to make sure you're not at risk of getting shut down by your provider. Now, web shrines are one of my biggest hurdles with making fan sites. I love web shrines, but good God, did I struggle to make one. But in case you're not like me, I'm going to cover the instructions I was given. You may be able to make more use of them than I did. I'm not a particularly wordsy person when it comes to fan stuff. One simple way to get started is by setting up a profile. I stole a lot of this from Mapapapa, but it's also answering questions posted on Olhari's Guide to Web Shrines. The profile is a simple rundown of your relationship with the canon. You can present this however you like, but I find that a table is fairly straightforward. So for the profile, I tend to include the year I got into, the media I consumed. This includes the source material, spin-offs, if I read the source text, if I've checked out any adaptations, whether I played the DS shovelware, my favorite characters, my favorite scenes, my OTP, my favorite OTP scenes, any other ships I have, what kind of fan content I make, what kind of fan content I consume, a spotlight of things I've made related to it, or a spotlight of things other people have made, and also things I don't want to talk about in relationship to it. There may be other categories you wish to include. If you're more into bands, you may want to talk about your favourite songs, your favourite lyrics, concerts you've been to, etc. But if you're into something like Minecraft, you may want to mix in your own playstyle with the SMPs you're interested in. If you're someone who only watches games through YouTube, you might want to spotlight particular people who've played that game and you've enjoyed their playthrough. You might want to include your favourite quotes or a particular cast recording. Whatever's important to your relationship to the canon. The profile may act as an jumping off point for you. You could write a section on any of these things, how you got into it, your review of each entry, who was the best cast and why. I have my Shin Megami Tensei shrine here, where I have a checklist of all the entries I've played, what platform they're on, and if it's even possible to play them in English. Please ignore that the background isn't working. I don't know what is up with it. Yeah, if they're available to play in English, you could write a whole analysis of your favourite character or a ship manifesto. But if you're like me, that doesn't work. So I had to work on another way round. So I'm going to introduce you to two of my shrines. The first one is my Always Shrine, which I've hidden all the spoilers on best I can. As you can see, here's my profile for it. I'm not going to show the art tab because there's spoilers in there, but on this tab, where every single post has been censored to not spoil Owe, I have every unhinged Tumblr post I have made in regards to Owe. This is a 1-to-1 copy of every post. Though I also include a link for if anyone wants to go and reblog it. Also, you don't have to use Tumblr posts. You can post your tweets, your skates, your toots, your DMs, your diary entries, wherever you've kept a record of your thoughts. You can just throw them on the shrine in separate boxes with no through line. If you're nice, you can maybe label which character or ship they're about. If you want to step this up a little, however, here's my Xeno Shrine. Now, at first glance, it's a little different. For one, I opened PicMix and had some fun. I went on and grabbed some GIFs from the GIF archive. I got silly with it, but what you may notice here is I wrote incoherent paragraphs, mostly. So I approached this one with a very similar idea. I gathered the hundreds of Discord messages I'd sent about Xeno and proceeded to sort them into relevant sections. I then sorted them into subsections until I could make them into coherent paragraphs of an idea. And anything that I couldn't make fit, but I wanted to preserve anyway, I just put in a box again. Problem solved. Obviously, this is a lot more work, and I think they serve different purposes as shrines. My Xeno Shrine will tell you all the analysis I've done and my complex feelings about the narrative. If you ever get to see my Always Shrine, you'll know who I think will survive falling off a pier and what their Cakeverse flavours are. Now, you may have noticed on this shrine that there's big text that says I wrote a primer. Primers are one thing I see recommended a lot for web shrines as a way to introduce people to the thing you like. I've done a few fandom primers, but since Xeno has come up, we'll take a look at the primer I wrote for it. So I'll typically start a primer by giving some info on what it is. Here I've put the name, the genre, the medium, the release date, status information, and where to access it. Since Xeno's a game, I also included my playtime length, since that was information I knew. I'll also sometimes include my notes regarding things that may impact someone's initial enjoyment, such as if there's translation issues. If you were writing about, say, Sailor Moon, you may want to specify which dub, or if you are die hard for subs only, because it's the kind of thing that can affect the enjoyment of the media. I then include a blurb. Now, look me in the eye. Hi. A blurb is not quotes. A blurb is not a full summary. You're going to introduce the characters, not necessarily by name. Give the scenario they're in and what the main conflict is. Now, I didn't write a particularly good blurb for Xeno, but the main points are there. So, who? 2 dudes with amnesia. Where? A strange facility filled with corpses. What? They have to get out while being handcuffed together. You may want to get into the how, why, or when. When is probably useful if the canon tells you that information, but the how and why may need to be held back depending on your canon. Again, I also use this part to give more information. Since it's a video game, I explain some of the mechanics side of it, and since it's a horror game, what kind of horror they'll be dealing with, along with the accessibility functions offered. Which is, of course, helped by having a content warning section. I really like having a content warning section as opposed to outsourcing to Does the Dog Die or similar, as it gives me the option to provide context and frame that others may leave out. I can specify that certain content can be avoided by not playing specific endings. I can explain why something that may, if you put a tick next to it on Does the Dog Die, may look off-putting, but I can be like, no, here's the context it's in. Here's why it can still work. I then have my character introduction. This is always the hardest for me because I desperately want to talk about Blorble Bingus, but I have to just give this surface level start of canon introduction to who they are. You, however, may need to sit and go, I promise you, they get there. Just wait for episode 506, I promise. There may be some other information you want to put in. Of course, I have my review of all the endings to let people know if I think they're worth playing and if they'll alter the enjoyment of the game. Alternatively, you may want to include tips for how to play it. You may want to recommend specific albums, recordings, information on where to purchase it and when. You might want to give an overview of what the shipping scene is like in the fandom. Give a brief, this ship's popular and it's enemies to lovers. This is the ship naming scheme in the fandom. That sort of thing. I also like to have a section on why I like it, what spoke to me in it, and what it means to me. I keep it brief since we have an entire shrine of my thoughts on Xeno. But if you are going to be talking about ships, there is always my beloved, the Ship Manifesto. There's kind of a lot of overlap in the Shrine and Manifesto since they're both going in depth with your feelings for the ship and analysis. Though if you wanted, you could make a ship primer as a vaguer concept, so you can get people interested in your ship without spoiling the source material. Though typically I feel you're going to be trying to appeal to people already in the fandom about your ship more than anyone else. You can also be really silly and not actually analyse. I've got a few that are the equivalent of me posting a screen cap and going, tell me I'm wrong. Alright, let's get started on a ship manifesto. The one I made up is for air gear, so please be very nice to me. I typically give a little intro similar to what we had on the primer to say what the source material is and any important notes about it. I also use a space to explain any jargon for people who aren't familiar with the series or maybe have been away from it for too long. Then I introduce the members of the ship, tell everyone a little bit about them in case anyone needs their memory jolted. This is less necessary for characters like Sora and Killick, but if I was talking about Gulp, Shiro, or people may need it more. And then there's the canon. This is basically where you put the meat of your analysis. This may be you just going for a list of quotes, describing scenes, etc., full essay style, especially if you're talking about book characters or other mediums with low visual aspects. If you've got something that you present plenty of images, you have the option to just post images in your desperate pointing. The best way to go about this is going through canon and just highlighting whatever spoke to you about the ship. But find every interaction they had and pull it in to explain how this affected your brain chemistry and what about it made you interpret it that way. Or you just go, yeah, this happened. Self-explanatory. Soren Killick have matching tattoos that makes his girlfriend question what the fuck is up with them. Self-explanatory. Then you scroll down, I have to reassure the audience about my massive brain. You got to go through the ship and address every argument you're going to have to prove you're onto something. I then like to have a why section, which can cover a variety of things. One thing I use it for is explaining what the actual appeal of it is to me. Sure, it's one thing to point at the breakup coding, but this lets me go into, yeah, I like that they're broken up. I like that they're never going to fix it, but they might still make out about it because they're what shaped each other. I can throw all the more metaphorical sides to things in here or particular readings. Basically, everything that comes to mind when faced the, hey, why do you ship that? Even when someone has seen all the screenshots. I'll also end off with a little section about the fandom. I tend to partially aim this at someone who doesn't know canon. So I give them some information on the source material, such as how you can get into it, what platforms it's hosted on, etc. Or what platforms it's hosted on, like Crunchyroll, etc. The primary thing here, though, is giving some introduction to the community that exists. For the ship specifically, you might be like me and there's no fandom for your ship, or you can go, yeah, so we've been here in or maybe you'll be like, yeah, we've been here in a 10-year-long ship war, but here's how to not get involved in that or how to get super involved in that. But the easy thing I like to offer is places to find fanworks related to your ship. This may be AO3, it may be FF.net, it might be the Pixiv tag, especially if your canon uses a special rot tag. You're just going to get them started and hopefully you'll have a shipper in no time. One thing I'm missing here, but you might want to add in, is a section for headcanons, AUs, and other things specific to how you're interacting with the ship. You can explain the effect you've been meaning to write for the past 5 years and just repeatedly dream about and explain over and over again in DMs without ever writing. Since you're running a fan site, you also have the option to join fan listings. Fan listings are basically what they sound like, a list of fans or something. The two primary places to find fan listings are thefanlistings.org and animefanlistings.com. You can browse these sites for things you're interested in, find a fan listing, and get started. Get signed up to have your website listed in return for following the rules. I recommend these sites because they're pretty good about keeping up to date with what listings are active and accepted to members. One thing is they may expect you to have some sort of content related to the fandom, but that will differ between fan listings. Web rings are another option for connecting with others. There's a couple of places to find web ring listings. There's a directory on Brisray that is currently devoted to listing active web rings, but the primary places I find them is on the websites of other people who are in said web rings. One of the ones I'm in is the fanfiction web ring, which has a directory of people who host their own fanfiction on their website. This one's really helpful when you're setting up your fanfics so you can see how other people stylize theirs and copy them / take inspiration. I'm also in things like Yaoiverse, Fujo Ring, the Fandom Web Ring, Fujo Fans. Even if I can't find things for my specific fandom, it's good to find people who generally vibe with your kind of mindset. I know we already had an about section, but that was about you as a person. This is getting into you as a fan. A lot of these are really simple ideas you'll be able to expand on yourself, but I'm presenting them as less intensive than a shrine or manifesto, so you can do them really quickly. There's the favourite character list. As it sounds, a list of your favourite characters. You might just have a picture of them. You might want a nice frame for them or to rotate them. You might want to write a paragraph explaining who they are and why you love them so much. You might just want to have a list of names, or you might want to do something like I did and just make a quick stat sheet, but that doesn't tell anyone anything important except who they are. You might want to do the same with your ships the exact same way. Here, here's some flashcards so you can hear more about Sora and Killick. The shipping page is one page that can be good for firing some Rentlow and gunshots, and it can also be beneficial as a here's your warning about what ships I'm going to be posting. If your no TP is in here, you know what to do. Then for people who do like your ships, you can use this space to go, and here's my headcanon that's one that you 100% agree with, and we are both super big brained, and we should talk about it sometime. A more specific thing I have is a log of all my live blogs. I use these to archive my live reactions to things. I went through the painstaking process of getting everything off Shitter. I made a free tool to make that slightly less painstaking as well. So you can grab that to make your life easier. If this is something you also do a lot, you could do similar for any thread you've posted and ask your friends permission to log their reactions as well if you're experiencing something together. It's a nice log for looking back on memories and letting others see how you reacted to your fandom's favourite heartbreaking scenes. If you're someone who does exchanges or Secret Santas, you may benefit from setting up a general exchange letter. This can be something you can copy and paste to be like, here's the tropes I like, here's what I don't like, here's the specific context if you need my explanation of what my relationship with a specific kink is, what I personally believe qualifies as wump, what kind of yandere I like, etc. You can also use this to store all the prompts you've got, so you don't have to remember to go searching for them every exchange. You can just have a master list to pluck from it each time and save yourself so much time of letter writing. Then it also doubles for if anyone wants to make something for you. They have a page they can go to and know the things you like. Another page I have is my roles page. This is where I keep a list of things that are connected to me and I recommend to others. These are just not working because this is not my usual browser and it's got some extension that blocks it. But, it's a list of things that are connected to me, I recommend to others. So I have a section for my friends and their websites, which also includes people I know who may be mentioned elsewhere on the site. So it gives a little context to who they are. I have one for web projects I'm interested in, such as webcomics, interactive stories, podcasts, YouTubers, etc. I have one for things that inspired me creatively, which can be good for people wanting to understand the context of my writing, but I also use it to bookmark artists I'm interested in. Then I have one for people and things that I'm following, so particular writers or blogs or projects. It works a bit of a promo space for the things I like. You can also expand on this to a whole page of recommendations if you want. There's also the Now page, which is a page used to give some information on what is going on in your life at the time of writing it. I use this space primarily to be like, here's what I'm watching, listening to, playing, reading, the projects I'm working on, etc. It can be a bit of a grounding exercise and a reminder of things you may need to get back to. You don't have to update it frequently. I think I went 9 months without updating it last time. It's just something you can check in on every so often, but it's good to date it so you and everyone else know how long it's been since now. Alright, so buttons. I'm not particularly good at making buttons, but I do recommend making a couple. The first one I recommend doesn't necessarily have to be a button, but some sort of graphic that can work as someone saying, I visited this page. Just something that they can post in boxes somewhere. For example, I have these two that you can just paste them into any comment box on my website. Then there's your actual site button. This is going to be handy because it makes it easy easy for people to link to your website. A huge thanks to Oculi on Blorble.social for helping me with this, because graphic design is my passion. The primary sizes for buttons in pixels are 88 by 31, 200 by 40, and 460 by 80. Though there's less people using the 460 by 80 nowadays, you can find a few templates online you can use if you need. Now, you can do whatever you want with these to express yourself, but just to get you started if you're struggling, pixel fonts have always been popular and are nice and simple while still being readable. They also make good use of smaller spaces. Aesthetics-wise, you can either use an existing image or design one specifically for the button. If there's too much clashing with the font and the image, it might help to put a filter on it. Really, the best thing you can do is look around and find a style that interests you and reflects what kind of person you are, and do something to work with that. If you're really struggling for space, you can also try making a GIF. So it will go between showing your site name and the things that you're actually interested in, which can be a big benefit if your name is, say, 13 characters long and taking up the entire button. You can decide what page is best to put your button on for people to copy. You could even give it its own dedicated page if you like. Then people just have to upload it to their own site with a link to yours, or you can provide code inside a text area tag, and your coding program may get really mad at you for it, but who cares? So hopefully that should be you well on your way to having a populated fan site. I'm going to try and have a discussion open so people can share their own websites and you can all start stealing from each other. If you have any questions, you're welcome to reach out. You can also pick up my zines on this subject and the Fredifier Macronator 9000, all of which are free on itch.io. Alright, thank you very much everyone. Bye bye!